I'm here at Aspen Ideas Festival with Sarah Kay, Vice President of Corporate Social Responsibility for Prudential Financial. Sarah, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm very excited to talk to you because we know Prudential Financial as, of course, a big financial group, but you run the philanthropic arm. So I'd love to hear about what your philosophy is around the philanthropy that Prudential is doing.
Yeah, well, I'd love to first start with telling the founding story of the company. So we were founded 149 years ago in Newark, New Jersey, and we're still headquartered there. And our founder, John Dryden, started the company because he saw a big societal need out there. He saw that working class families didn't have the financial means to bury their loved ones. And so our first product was burial insurance, and it cost as little as 3 to 5 cents a week. And so he really disrupted a marketplace that didn't always trust that working class families would continue to pay their premiums, and provided a product that allowed working class families to bury their loved ones with dignity. That stays in the ethos of the company of looking at what are some of the societal challenges, where can we bring our products and solutions to bear to help solve some of these challenges, but then really looking at also our philanthropic side of making sure that we're constantly giving back to the community. And so for our philosophy, we have a couple of values around our philanthropy, which is one, we know it takes a long time to do this work. So patient capital is one of our value, really staying dedicated to organizations for the long term. We don't make short-term one-time grants. This is really looking at how we're going to look at solving the problem over a period of time. We also look at our philanthropic dollars as risk capital. Can nonprofits try to test and try new ideas without fear of failure, without getting punitive around if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But we do think that nonprofit organizations and philanthropy have a role in trying to test ideas that could ultimately scale to the mainstream. We also think about our work as catalytic capital and seeding new ideas and hoping that it will flourish into, grander scale, but really looking at how do you provide that initial capital to seed new ideas and innovative solutions. And so we take that approach with everything that we do, and in addition to the fact that we are place-based in Newark, New Jersey.
What kind of issues are you focused on right now? And is there a certain group maybe that you're really attracted to trying to help?
We're focused on a couple of different issues in our philanthropic work. First is our place-based work in Newark, New Jersey, and we look at all aspects of what does it mean to create an inclusive and equitable economy for Newark residents. So that's looking at how to improve public education, public safety, how to build a strong small business ecosystem, affordable housing options, arts and cultures, really looking at how do you create a thriving and vibrant community in Newark. Then we have a portfolio of work that's most closely aligned with our own business products and solutions, which is our work and wealth portfolio. And that's really looking at how do we make sure that people have the right training and credentials and the skill sets to actually obtain a good job? How do we make sure that job is actually of quality, providing family-sustaining wages, benefits, and working schedules that work for these families? And at the same time, looking at the flip side of that, making sure that they have the income streams, but then they also have access to tools and resources to build their assets and wealth. We really want to think about this as intergenerational wealth transfer of how do we make sure individuals have the income and the benefits and the access to ownership pathways to actually help build their wealth.
And as part of that, your philanthropy committed $180 million to Opportunity Youth. Give us a definition first of Opportunity Youth here in the United States. Then we'll talk about how you went about making this all possible.
Yeah, we're so excited to talk about this commitment to Opportunity Youth. As far as we know, this is the largest corporate commitment to Opportunity Youth. And these are young people in the United States between the ages of 16 and 24 who are not in formal education or training or employment. And there are almost 6 million Opportunity Youth in this country. And unfortunately, it has increased post the COVID pandemic when so many things have been shut down in this country. And Opportunity Youth are young people that previously people called disconnected, at risk. But during the Obama administration, there was a coalition of people that said, let's think about these young people differently. Let's think about them about what the potential is if they had access to the right resources and different pathways. And so we're really focused on this population because we believe these are our future leaders of nonprofits, of businesses, of government, and they just need access to the right resources and tools to provide them the good skills.
And before we go on to more about what you're doing with that money and how it's being used, these are young people who maybe have or have not a high school degree, and they are probably working at low-paying jobs if they're working at all, correct?
Correct. And these are people, and the reason why they have come into the situation that they are, it's either because of family situations, where they were born, violence that may happen. it's not because they don't have the will or the desire. It's oftentimes they are born into a situation that doesn't provide them the access to the opportunities that you and I may have had in our upbringing.
Well, opportunity is the big part of it, but it's also awareness, I think. I think there's a lot of lack of awareness to some of those opportunities. And I know that we have spoken before, and we talked about the groups that you're working with are helping make that possible too. So tell me a little bit about the companies or the organizations that you're working with.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if we think about when we started our careers, I didn't know half the jobs that existed out there. And so especially for young people who don't have those kind of networks of people, of knowing what's out there, these nonprofit organizations are so incredibly important. So we support a couple of different organizations, well, not a couple, many organizations in this space, but a couple that I will mention is, for example, Year Up. And I know Gerard has participated in your podcast before, but that's an organization that's really focused on giving real hard skills. It's almost an apprenticeship program where they train them for 6 months and then they place them at a corporate internship for 6 months. And we have hired many interns now who have been converted to full-time hires. We have a young lady, Chanel Ford, who is our first intern that converted into a full-time hire. And she consistently talks about how when she was converted to a full-time hire, she had access to healthcare benefits, to a daycare backup center, and that's completely transformed her life because she is a single mother. Another organization that we support is called Youth Build. They are an organization that was started almost over 50 years ago and helping opportunity youth, first in the construction trades, and now they branch out into technology, hospitality, and a whole different other set of services. But they really focus on those young people who don't have a high school degree, who have dropped out of high school, get them back into either high school or getting a GAD and training in them in these types of different industries to get them into the pipeline of jobs. And then the other one, since we're here at Aspen, is the Aspen Institute. We've been supporting their Opportunity Youth Forum for a number of years now, and they started it over a decade ago, also during President Obama's administration with the Social Innovation Funds. But now they've grown to 40 plus communities. They're from urban, rural, tribal communities, and these are citywide coalitions that's looking at every aspect of how do we make sure these young people have access to these employment pathways. So looking at everything from K through 12, higher education, workforce development organizations, to also policies, and how do we make sure all social services are providing the supports that these young people need.
So your goal was to invest this $180 million, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you said by 2025. Where are you at on that goal?
I'm really happy to say that we have actually achieved our goal a year in advance. We said $180 million by 2025, and we actually accomplished that goal a year in advance. And we've invested in over 20 different organizations globally that have impacted hundreds and thousands of young people. We know even just last year through our impact data that over 500,000 opportunity youth were connected to training opportunities, employment opportunities. And the other factor, the flip side of what we're also supporting, is really making sure that they're accessing financial capability tools as well too. So we're supporting organizations that are working with the training providers to make sure the young people are building their credit, they're starting to save, they're looking at budgeting and financing so that when they do get their full-time job, they're able to really think about financial security as well.
And what have you learned from involvement with these groups? And you mentioned Year Up and Youth Build, and I know there's many others, but what have you learned about how important this is in a community and to the people that they're helping?
It's incredibly important to focus on this population because, as I mentioned, these are future leaders of our communities, of our family households, and just what they're going to contribute to the economy. The few things that I've learned is that there's so much misconception about who these young people are. People still think of them in a negative light, that they don't have the will to do something or they just chose to drop out and that no other factors impacted that decision. And so we're still combating that narrative, which is why we call them opportunity youth, to really think about them in the positive light. So there's still a lot of misconceptions of who these young people are. And we're trying to create this opportunity youth movement globally because globally they talk about these young people as NEETs, which are not in education or employment training. So really negative lights. We also understand that communities don't necessarily understand what all the support services that these young people need. It's not just about getting them into a training program. But sometimes these are single parents or they don't have support systems behind them and really making sure that they have access to transportation costs, childcare needs. It really takes a holistic approach. It can't just be one organization that's working on this population for the city, but that you need to bring in social services. You need to bring government agencies and really think about the holistic combination of it all. We also learned that at times we try to pair up organizations to work together, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't. And we understand that. And this is in all cases, but particularly because we had this bigger initiative, was really understanding how organizations considered who their partners were, making sure that it was structured correctly from the very beginning. That's been a learning lesson for us as well, too, to make sure that we have the right partners. And we've had to shift and tweak the way that we're working on things. And then I will say we have this portfolio called Work and Wealth because we really want to combine these two aspects of it. And I would say some of the training providers on the opportunity use side were not quite as aware of these financial capability resources and tools. And since we made this commitment, we've seen so many of our partners now embed financial education, literacy, tools, and resources into their programs.
I think that's an important issue, too. The idea that economic mobility comes out of this exposure and the opportunity for the opportunity youth and for other people when we talk totally about job workforce development. So this idea that you've got the opportunity to create economic mobility, but this idea of understanding financial literacy and knowing what to do with the money once you get it is an important issue to you.
Exactly. So there's an organization that we support called MyPath that's specifically focused on this population of opportunity youth and helping them increase their savings or building up, or I shouldn't even say building up, but oftentimes it's rebuilding their credit because we know many of these young people, unfortunately, family members sometimes take advantage of the fact that these young people have good credit in the very beginning and often use their names. And then when they realize when they're trying to open up a bank account that they have really poor credit scores. And so what MyPath does is work with our workforce development organizations like a Youth Build and Perscholas and others, and really thinking about how can we embed the financial literacy and education, but also combining it with tools and resources. Because we know financial education is really important, but financial education alone is not going to move the needle. They also need to be able to actively change behaviors and utilize tools around that.
And helping individuals achieve both job opportunities, career pathways, and this wealth transfer, this wealth building, it has a bigger impact on a community and on our society as a whole. How do you see that? What is your thought around that?
We think it's incredibly important. I think what the pandemic showed us is that having a job in and of itself is not going to create the financial security that we need. We saw millions of people on food lines lining up for benefits that had jobs when that were impacted. And so that connection between work and wealth is so incredibly important to building financial stability, resiliency, and ultimately what we hope is prosperity, because we want young people to build up that assets and those wealth to be able to transfer it down to their children and thereafter. And we know that once that happens, once they feel that sense of financial stability, they can start giving back to the community as well, helping to build up, whether they want to be an entrepreneur or work at a corporation or a small business, they are giving back to society and just improving the economy overall. And so all of these points have all these different connections.
So you're headquartered in Newark. Newark has been your home from the beginning. What are you doing locally? You're a giant global corporation now, but there is that local commitment. So what are you doing?
Yeah, we're really excited to be celebrating our 150th anniversary in Newark next year. And I think it's pretty rare that a global financial services company like ours is headquartered still in a community like Newark. And we like to say that we've redefined what an anchor institution is, and we consider ourselves a leading anchor institution in Newark. And actually, maybe about 7 years ago in 2016, we actually led the development of a Newark Anchor Collaborative that includes education, higher education institutions, performing arts centers, hospitals, but also corporations like ours, Audible, and others that are headquartered in Newark. And we're really looking at how do we make sure that we're procuring more locally? How do we make sure that Newark residents are getting the right skills and credentials to be working in the city, working at each of our institutions? And how do we make sure that we're building a middle class? And that means that we're deeply embedded in all citywide initiatives, whether we took the proactive approach to actually develop it or we're a participant. We're on a great example is the Newark Public Safety Collaborative. That's a collaborative that we worked on in partnership with the Mayor's Office and Rutgers University Newark. And that's a stakeholder group that includes the police force, the Mayor's Office, global security officers from our company and other corporations, and nonprofit leaders and residents. And they're looking at a data-driven community safety approach of let's look at a different hotspot of why there are one example is there was one quarter where there were a lot of car thefts. And they said, let's take a look at the data. Why is that happening? At what hour? Turns out they were all happening at night. Turns out all the street lamps had gone out on that street. And we're looking at the data, sharing that data transparently with community residents, and they're developing the solutions and testing and trying to then scale to the rest of the city. And that's the approach that we take with our work in Newark, to make sure that Newark residents are at the table in creating solutions, really making sure that they see us as a partner, not just this global financial service company that's headquartered here. But we want to make sure that we're sharing the prosperity that we're experiencing and that we're building an inclusive economy in Newark.
And I want to ask you one more thing about the company itself. We discussed this. You have emergency child care for your employees. And for a working parent, male or female, that's an important part, because you mentioned it earlier that transportation can be an issue. Childcare can be an issue for the Opportunity Youth in the program that you're dealing with. It can be an issue for your own employees.
100%. I mean, Prudential, we are a benefits provider with life insurance and disability insurance, annuities, and others. And so we want to make sure that our own employees have access to the benefits that's going to create a holistic wellness for our employee. And one of those key benefits is making sure that we have full-time backup daycare. And so our employees, when their childcare situation or their school is closed, can utilize the backup daycare center that is in-house in Newark, or they can actually utilize the services to have somebody come to their home as well, too, to watch their child in their home. And so we really want to make sure that it's not just about thinking about actual benefits of retirement or health insurance, but really thinking about all the different aspects of physical and mental health. So we have access to resources around making sure the best doctors are available. You can call a service to get the best doctors to look at certain diagnoses and provide different recommendations. We have access to counselors and therapists if people are having mental health issues. And so there's a whole variety of benefits that we're providing our employees.
Kind of goes back to that idea of a good job. And a good job's not just about good pay, it's good benefits and good support from your employer, I think.
100%. And also added to that is the career advancement part, and making sure that our employees have access to skills training that's upskilling and reskilling. And we have this whole talent marketplace where employees can go if they want to increase their PowerPoint skills, or thinking about how do you better influence or negotiate, but then also thinking about data and AI and all those analytics and those kind of coding skills that employees can also participate in.
What's ahead for your group?
We're super excited about, we are fulfilling the commitment where we have fulfilled the commitment of $180 million. We want to celebrate the fact that these young people are changing the narrative of who these young people are, making sure the federal government consistently provides funding every year for not only nonprofit organizations, but looking at policy improvements. We remain committed to this population. We're really looking at the connection between work and wealth and really making sure financial capability is embedded into these workforce training programs.
Thank you, Sarah, for being on the Work in Progress podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
I've been speaking with Sarah Kay, Vice President of Corporate Social Responsibility for Prudential Financial. I'm Ramona Schindelheim, Editor-in-Chief of Working Nation. Thank you for listening.